What's going on, guys? Episode 5 of the Right Minds, Right Times podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Smith, and I'm here with two guests, Kyle Smithson and John Stalberg. How are you guys doing?
Great. Doing well. Well, driving.
So, yeah, doing good. So, I see you guys just came out with the film, Muzzle. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how you kind of came up with that film and what made you want to record it the way you did?
Yeah, I mean, we made this film based on just the notion of seeing law enforcement officers talking with their canine partners as if they were human partners, like sitting in the front seat, and gave us the idea to do it. Kyle and I had just done another film together called Bad Hombres, which comes out January 26th. So we were just involved in that, and so we hopped into this movie. It was written by Carlisle Eubank, a guy who I directed a film that he'd written called Crypto that we did with Kurt Russell. So pitched it to him, developed the script with him, and he's a hell of a filmmaker himself. And we just kind of jumped into it. We found Aaron Eckhart, and then we threw a cop uniform on Kyle and threw him in the scene with Aaron Eckhart in a cop uniform, and got some dogs, and away we went.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Why is it specifically with police dogs? Because the police dogs, I feel like was a big part of the movie. Is there any specific reason why you're so focused on the police dog aspect? Was it because it's just drug related?
The fact that they're narcotics animal just became an interesting. It became an interesting subject in general. Once you look into it, how these guys that are in from Kentucky, where we shot part of the film, to Los Angeles, all over the world. You go to you're in an airport in Berlin, and you understand why they're speaking German to their dogs. But the guys in Kentucky are speaking German to their dogs, and they're speaking Dutch. And so it started to become this like fascinating subject of like these dogs and how they're trained, and they're trained in German, and what they do and how they use them and how dangerous they can be, and how they're trained to be dangerous and how they go through that process. So that became interesting. But then on top of the actual logistical fascination that we had with these animals and how these guys have been using them since, I mean, you remember Gladiator, when Russell Crowe's character has a dog in war and combat, and these animals are, well, the animal doesn't understand nowadays when they're running through the city of, LA and Skid Row or whatever, that they're not in ancient Rome fighting like, Huns. Like, to them, it's the same thing.
Hmm.
So that became interesting, that these animals are trying to be like loyal, like fierce warriors, but also it became metaphorically interesting that these dogs somehow could theoretically represent they could be like an internal struggle personified as an animal. And if you have a character that's dealing with PTSD and he's got struggling with his own quote unquote animal, and then you have a guy externally trying to control an animal, well, shit, that could function really well as story, as a narrative, and work in an interesting character way, in an interesting metaphor way. So I think they both started to dovetail together, and then we had a movie.
Yeah. And I think Aaron Eckhart played an amazing. He did such an amazing job acting. And
He's
so, how
good.
was it like working with? How was it like working with Aaron and Stefan?
Well, Aaron, Aaron's an interesting guy. I worked with him great. I loved working with him. I want to work with him again. I have a movie that I'm attached to direct that I'm talking to him about now. I don't think Aaron is for like any old director or actors. I mean, Kyle played one of the guys who's like, in the thick of it with Aaron, and like he got along great with him too. And so certain people I think will vibe with this type of guy. He's a very serious guy about what he does. I love that, right? He doesn't want to take selfies and post Instagram reels about his day and what kind of shoes he's wearing. And I just dropped my coffee. And and he's not trying to do all that stuff. He's trying to like be great, and that's what he cares about. And sometimes that can be like, I think, off-putting to some people. I've heard stories about people working with Daniel Day-Lewis, how he's like, you're not working with Daniel Day-Lewis, you're working with Abraham Lincoln or whatever. He's in character. Aaron's the same way. He's like a method actor. He's in character. He's off. If he needs to be by himself because it's a dramatic scene and he's going to be off, he's not going to be talking to anybody. Super friendly guy. He chums it up and everything, but he's just like, his priority is on being as good as he possibly can in each scene. Me as a filmmaker, I really appreciate that. I'm not looking to make best friend, a new friend. Like, of course, Kyle and I became friends through the last couple films, but and that's great. But I'm not looking for that. I want an actor who's going to be as good as they can possibly be. That's what he's about, and he delivered in the movie. It's just a really good performance. So I love it.
Awesome. So, Kyle, what are your thoughts on him? Do you think he was like the perfect fit for the role?
Oh yeah, once I got on set, and of course, Aaron Eckhart is an amazing actor. Period, and he's one of the actors that I've always looked up to. So this was one of my first big films coming back as an actor. So you never know going into it, what's going to happen. So when we first got on set, again, Aaron's very to himself, in his trailer and things like that. So I didn't really get to meet him before the scene, and what I like about John is he just throws you in and says go for it. And we were in the scene coming up, with his dog, and everything's it's a serious scene, right? So I'm a very professional, so I do my lines and all that, and then I think I had one line where I kind of made up a line and it made him laugh, and afterwards he said great job, and that just kind of made it ease because you know a big actor like that, you never know how he's going to act toward you or anything like that. But Aaron is extremely nice, very helpful. We just got along great together, and I love to work with him again. So it was a wonderful experience.
And the other thing that's
Oh, that's
interesting is
awesome.
that Kyle's playing an LAPD officer, and Aaron's playing an LAPD officer. And even though he's kind of what we established at the beginning of the film is that the canine division, they're not really accepted by the everyday beat cops who are sort of more of a tight crew. So they're all part of a brotherhood, which becomes revealed later when the stakes get increased. That these beat cops that are working, this Sixth Street, Skid Row, San Julian kind of area, they're a little bit wary of him. They need the canine, but they're a little bit sort of like insular in their own silo at LAPD, and so they kind of there's a little bit of static between them, but ultimately these guys are professionals, and so therefore, like, because Aaron's a method actor, he treated Kyle's character, Officer O'Keefe, like he's a fellow professional, and it's another day at the office, which was cool because it's like I think if Kyle were to play a character that was really like diametrically opposed to him in terms of like what his character wanted, then maybe he would be like tougher in his relationship with Kyle on and off camera. But because they were like supposed to be co-workers, they acted like
Yeah.
that. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool it all unfolds because when you're making a movie, the movie like takes on a life of its own, and the key, I think, is my own opinion, is you have to go with it. You have to like go with where the movie go. So when actors start bringing their character into the like making of the movie, it like just more clearly informs where the movie is going. You know what I mean? So I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed watching these two guys work together.
Yeah, I got a question. As you're the since you're the director and we got the executive producer, how often do the actors kind of come up with their own lines like improv? Did that happen a lot in this movie, or what did they stick mostly to the
They
lines?
stick mostly to the lines. Kyle's right. Like he did that. He threw that line out that's in the movie. It's in the cut. With the I before E except after C, senor. Um, Again, to like show that he's like messing with Diego, and also he developed a relationship with Diego Tinoco, who played Hernandez, and that
Mhm.
kind of big brother giving your little brother a noogie thing, like he kind of they started to have that relationship on and off camera and became really close, and so I let them riff on that because that is what their relationship started to tell me. Like, oh, they have this thing now. They're joking around. They were hanging out all the time. Like, so I'm going to let them like joke around. The first thing I do to an actor is I take the script and I like, as much as I work hard on the script with the writers, and I take it and I like throw it in the trash. Back in the day when we used to print them out, we don't print them out really anymore. I would just toss it in the trash and be like, say whatever you want, just as long as it's good, like, or interesting. Make it as good as it can possibly be. And then Aaron was like, dude, I memorized the script a year ago. And he started riffing into a full monologue from like the scene with the therapist that we weren't shooting for another 2 weeks. And he did it like verbatim. And he's like, I have this script memorized a year in advance. So that was pretty impressive. So he didn't really change. Aaron didn't
Yeah.
change anything. But I'm always open to it because in the moment, if something natural, organic happens, like I want the movie to be alive and start to create itself almost. And you just kind of help it grow as like its own thing. If you try to too strongly or strictly impose what the sort of premeditated vision was, I feel like you can hinder some of the magic that happens when you make the movie, you know. But
And to and to
Yeah.
go
yeah,
on
it's
top,
just
as an actor, with working with John as an actor, what I love about John is, again, as he said, you have the script, which is kind of the foundation and kind of the structure of it all, but then he allows you to read it and then interpret it yourself, and a lot of times just kind of pick it apart and become your own character, and then that the collaboration of everything, and then he does. It's not like a dictatorship. Kind of guides you and directs you, and with it all, it becomes a one. So that's what I love about working with John as an actor.
Yeah. So you guys, now, I was thinking about it, and it seems like I haven't seen a real pro cop movie in a very long time. So when's like the last time a cop movie was around? It feels like it was like RoboCop or something.
yeah.
you know?
I want to say that like they were probably they were on television more and on in feature films. I think television got a little bit of a pass, but up until around 2020, when the pandemic hit, and there was that sort of like racial reckoning, overcorrection. And I remember Andre
Mhm.
Broward on Brooklyn Nine-Nine released this statement, and this beautiful like Vanity Fair spread on him, and he was talking about how playing a cop on TV was problematic, and I was like, you're on a sitcom, and is it? I started to think the export of this industry for 100 years has been the rogue cop, from Jimmy Cagney to Lethal Weapon, Beverly Hills Cop, Serpico, Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry. I mean, on and on and on and on. Die Hard, John McClane. It just like nonstop. Not only was it dominating theaters in America, but it was dominating and really kind of gobbling up all of the movie going experience across the world and throughout Europe and whatnot. So these guys were just, audiences across the world were devouring the Hollywood product of the rogue hero cop, the cop who operates by his own code, wants to stop the bad guy. The French Connection, Gene Hackman. It's like all these great characters nonstop. You could go on for an hour listing them and still have more. And so the idea is like we stopped making those because of some like conversation we were having as a country and all that stuff that obviously like went, it was this massive overcorrection that stopped making the thing that we like to watch that inherently is not problematic at all, right? Like if the problem is Derek Chauvin, well, let's like try him in a court of law and pass judgment on him. Not in a kangaroo court, not in the movie world, but all of a sudden like you're killing something that's not even tangential, is absolutely not connected at all. And if you wanted to get into the politics of it, there was this notion of like defund the police. Well, it's like, don't defund. First of all, that's a horrible idea, and it's been proven that it's
Horrible.
statistically was an absolutely horrible idea. If you look in from Minneapolis, where the whole George Floyd incident happened, to cities like L.A., where like not only does George Gascon let all the criminals out of jail and it tears the city apart, but they cut $100 million from the LAPD budget. When the BLM mob was outside of Mayor Garcetti's house, and he literally got down on his knees and cut $100 million. And I'm like, what are you doing? And then like cut to a year and a half later where like everybody's like houses are being burglarized and they're finally realizing it was a bad idea. It's like, yeah, you think that was a bad idea? Long
Duh. Yeah.
long answer, but um, I feel like defunding the police turned out to be a bad idea, and defunding police movies was also a bad idea.
Well, that's kind of common sense to me, right? Defunding the police. Like, what do they think is going to happen? People are going to take advantage of that, be like, oh, there's not enough police force to go around where all the crime is. And yeah, like you said, Minneapolis, I believe that the crime rate went up at least, it was
It was
something crazy.
two
It was
hundred
either
percent.
100,
It was 200%.
200%.
Two hundred
Yeah.
percent. Yeah.
Yeah. Like stuff like that. And they tried to replace police officers with
Right. Social workers.
community
Yeah, social workers.
officer, social workers, right?
Yeah.
To when something's happening, they're just be like, "Oh, it's okay, calm down, guys. It's okay, calm down."
Mm.
It's like that's not going to make the person calm down. You need someone to get in there and use physical force to stop that from happening. And if we look at like San Francisco, California, I'm sure you guys know that plenty well. And I believe you guys actually didn't actually film in LA. You filmed in what's it in Kentucky,
We
right?
filmed both in Louisville and we did film in LA. So we filmed in and around
Okay.
Skid Row, and what we did was I basically intercut throughout the whole movie, intercuts between the stuff we filmed in LA and the stuff we filmed in Louisville, and it's pretty seamless. Like I'm actually really proud of the fact that the film feels 100%. Like, I don't know, what do you think? I mean, but I was pretty proud of
I
like,
totally agree.
yeah. So that was because
Yeah.
we had
So
this guy
why
named Andy Resnick, our production designer, built like this fake Skid Row in Louisville, Kentucky. We found some great locations. My cinematographer Peter Vermeer lensed it in such a way that was seamless between the stuff that we shot in LA that he did for free. I mean, I paid for an LA unit. The production didn't even pay for it. So I like just funded this LA unit where we got some cars and some vans and some cameras, and we just filmed stuff. And it's intercut throughout and it's pretty seamless. But at the end of the day, I want the movie to be as good as it can be, you know, almost to the like detriment of my bank account. But I'm just like, I just want it to be good, and
And I'm
feel real.
I'm gonna add to that. So again, as an actor, I wasn't able to see the set until the day of, and when I got there, I felt like I was in LA because they actually flew me out. How I met John, flew me out to LA. First of all, to meet John, and also walk Skid Row in LA to get into character. And I was like, guys, y'all could have just sent me some videos. That would have been fine. But it allowed me to get into that character of who Officer O'Keefe really is. I mean, when we were in Kentucky, the set designer and everything, I mean, it's flawless. So very.
Oh, it is. It is. Did you guys did so what did you record? Because the tent scenes where you showed all the tents, the needles on the ground, I mean that was definitely in LA. Was that in LA
No,
that
so
you recorded
basically
that stuff?
all of the shots of the tent city stuff leading up to that like scene is in LA. It's in Skid Row. And then once he pulls his car, it's almost seamless, like the way it intercuts. Like you
Yeah.
see, like it's real tent city, real tent city, real tent city, and then he pulls up to and it's Louisville, Kentucky set. And even for that set, it was
Wow.
so realistic. I should send you. There's this news article. We were in Louisville, and I went into the Starbucks at the Hyatt Regency where I was staying, and they were really friendly to me. And then one day I go downstairs into the Starbucks, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, good morning," and they were like giving me just like this stone cold like cold shoulder, and I was like, "What?" I said, so much so that I even said something. Is there something wrong? And they're like, "Y'all were on the news last night," and I'm like, "Uh oh, what was it?" And they sent me the news story, and it was like the city up in arms thinking there was a homeless encampment in this like area of Louisville. It was so realistic. They did a full news report on it. Like
Wow.
there's this Skid Row type homeless encampment. Like what is this graffiti? These drug addicts. Like what is going on? This full news report. I'm like, guys, it's make believe. This is a movie. We're going to clean it up, and we did. We repainted everything. But I posted. It's on my social media. You should. It's on my Instagram. It's actually pretty funny.
And then the scene
That's
where
awesome.
the needles are, we had to shorten it in the movie, but that's actually a longer scene. So I'm really proud that John allowed that into the deleted. the DVD, which actually comes out tomorrow. So Muzzle DVD comes out tomorrow on all platforms.
Yeah, yeah. So that was, I mean, I'm sure you guys probably could have just gone to LA and filmed it for free, right? With just
Well,
all the tents everywhere and
well, that's what we
everything.
did. So, like, we did. So, all those tents in the beginning are real. There's actually so many people in this movie that don't know they're in this movie. Like, all those people in the
Wow, that's
beginning are
crazy.
that's all real. The guy under the bridge smoking, the woman on the side of the road, like all these
Really?
people are just real. I'm just filming real people. So, very documentary style, like this docu-realism. I wanted the movie to feel as real as possible. It's so hard to make fake stuff feel real. That's like the trick of filmmaking, how to make fake stuff feel real. And I think we did. Like, that's why the whole stuff, this is the first movie I ever shot where everything was handheld, you know.
Hmm.
I never shoot handheld. In fact, Bad Hombres, I said, comes out January 26th. There's not one handheld shot in the whole movie. And this, there are some locked off shots, but almost every shot's handheld because I was trying to give it that, or if it's not handheld, it's shaky. It's not stabilized. Nowadays, you could stabilize these shots like very easily in post. I chose to not stabilize any of my driving stuff, my hood mounts, my hostess tray with the camera. I left it real nasty and gritty, to try to make it feel real and intercut with the real stuff.
Yeah, no, it definitely you did an amazing job. When I tell you it feels real, if you guys watch the film, it feels so real. I mean, you even actually a lot of the cops in the movie were actually real cops,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, they were. These cops were they were real cops. We had a lot of real cops, Louisville cops, the canine unit. This guy, Sergeant Kevin Casper, he led us into the canine facility, and he's in the movie. And all of his crew are in the movie. They're in the funeral scene. They're in all the dog training scene. Those are real police dogs training.
Okay.
It's extremely dangerous to be not in any protective gear and be sitting in a dog like canine training facility while these dogs are running wild, but they are so trained, you can't believe it. So every once in a while, they would pay some attention to us. These aren't dogs that you can reach out and pet. You can't, you actually should
Yeah,
not let them, when they're off leash, get anywhere near you. Um, Again, they're sweet animals, and these guys take them home as part of their family, which was also another very interesting aspect. You're training this thing to tear human beings apart every day, and then you have a daughter or two, sons at home that are little, and your dog is with the family. It's like, how does that work? And that's how it is. So that's super interesting too. But we definitely, we tried to be just like on tender hooks and, you know, keeping our distance. Even the cops who are their commanders, their trainers, their masters, or they call them their handlers, they're covered in these massive scars from accidental bites.
really.
Oh, dude.
Wow.
Their arms are all chewed up, even through the bite suit. They wear these big bite suits and they get all chewed up, nasty. And Kevin Casper would show me these huge bruising, contusions. And the other guys would, they all, I have pictures of them, all their scars on their hands. I mean, giant scars. And I'm like, what happens when the dog accidentally, they're going for it's an accidental bite. They're going for a treat they're going for the toy, this big rubber
Yeah.
ball, and they accidentally get them. I said, what do you guys do? If it's basically like a killer dog and it's now bitten right through your hand, and your immediate instinct or the training is that you have to show the dog that you're the alpha and get right up in the dog's face. I'm like, that's the last thing. He just bit through your hand. I said, what did you do? He goes, I had to get, into a dominant position and put my face right up close to the dog's face and show him that I was the boss. And the dog went, uh-oh, oops, something went sideways. Um, the whole world is really interesting. And those guys were really cool. All those cops in the movie with the sleeve tattoos and the dogs and,
Yeah.
it's just, those guys are all cool and they all helped us out and made the movie more real.
Was it local police officers? Like, how did you find them? Were you just walking in the police station? You guys want to be in a movie,
Well, yeah,
type thing?
I was location scouting, right? And this guy Vin Morial was our location scout. He was also our background. He ended up doing background casting. So our location scout ended up doing background, which was really helpful because when we would go scout like the police kennels, like the canine kennels, he would call them up and he would get us in there. We would go in, meet all the cops. He would get all their information. And then when it came time to shoot and we needed cops, he had all their information. So he'd be like, oh, well, let me call the guys who showed us the canine kennel. And because we're going to shoot there. And he got their, approval to film in the actual canine kennels. Then he could just say, hey, do you guys want to be background actors? And they were like, yeah, we'd love it. And we noticed in the canine area, because those guys, they, almost like a fire department, they sit around till they call the canine, they patrol, but then they also like just kind of hang out until they get a call. For it's
Hmm.
necessary for canine, they're criminal on the run or somebody got away or whatever. And so we looked at, there was like a big TV and there was a lot of comfortable chairs, like lazy boys, and there was a big stack of DVDs. And all the DVDs were cop movies. It was like Lethal Weapon, Beverly Hills Cop, like Serpico, French Connection. It was all the movies I named. And I was like, oh my God, this movie is going to be like, how many times are they going to watch it? Like, you can tell, like, all the canine officers across the country are going to get this film. I mean, should buy the DVD and put it on their stack. And when they're sitting around, they're going to love it. It's the first movie about their entire world, It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's like a super realistic movie, and I like that. And that's how I kind of felt when I was just watching it. Nothing seemed super fake or unrealistic at all. It just seemed, if you live in San Francisco or LA, this movie's gonna hit home.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And but when you were hiring, right? Did that strike the? I believe it's called the, what's it called?
The
The SAG
SAG strike.
AFTRA
Yeah, the SAG
strike.
had no,
Yeah, the
no
SAG
effect.
strike.
No effect. The only effect that it had was Aaron couldn't promote the movie. So he's really
Well, what
happy.
is the strike though? What is the strike kind of about? Just so people kind of know.
So the strike was about, first of all, every 3 years the guild and actors guild specifically, their contract is up for renegotiation and renewal with the consortium of studios and TV producers. It's not really the producers, it's sort of a misnomer. It's the Association of Television and Film Studios, right? And streamers, they're a part of it too.
Mhm.
I think part of the problem is that the streamers have different agenda. Apple, Netflix, Amazon. Amazon sells soap. Apple sells phones and technology. Netflix just streams content. So they're very different than the agendas of, like, say, a Warner Brothers or Paramount, like a traditional movie studio that has a theatrical business, maybe a theme park business. So they all have like very different businesses now. So it was really difficult, I think, to get them all on the same page. And on the other side, the
Mhm.
actors were led by, in my opinion, like a moronic team of people, an absolute like morons. So you have people that are very smart, but they have like disparate business agendas and goals on one side. That's difficult because don't. It's difficult to form a consensus in a negotiation. And on the other side, you have morons. So it's like
Mhm.
you're set up for a very difficult process. And they did have it was a historically long actors strike, and some of the things that they were calling for were like, actors calling for the streamers to show, basically pay residuals like the old school television networks. But for that to work, the
Yep.
streamers would have to admit their metrics, which is essentially creating like an open source to their algorithm. And there was no way in hell they were going to do that, right? Because everything would be revealed. It's like looking behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz, right? If Netflix says like, this show that you claim is a hit actually wasn't a hit, and this show that is a hit you're claiming didn't do what, like, okay,
Oh.
it would just be like Pandora's box. And the studios didn't give a shit because they don't have algorithms. I mean, they do because they have these
Yeah.
nascent streamers like, Disney Plus or Paramount Plus or whatever. But that's not their core business. In fact, those businesses, they lose money. They're like lost leaders, or they're not even lost leaders. They're just sort of like losing businesses for the traditional studios. So you had this like, pardon my language, giant clusterfuck, right? And that's ultimately what it was about. But because of that, Aaron couldn't promote the movie. Diego couldn't promote. Kyle couldn't really promote the movie. I mean, Kyle's a producer, so that's why we could go out there and do press. But the other actors who were just the actors, um, who plays Mia in the film, Stephen Lang, who plays the dog trainer, Granger Hines, who plays the therapist, was one of the best turns in the movie, I think. Great actor. He was from
Yeah.
The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the Coen Brothers movie. He's just a fantastic character actor. Couldn't promote the movie. So that hurts. That hurts the film. But we still were beating Indiana Jones on Apple, which was pretty cool. We were number 5 on Apple the opening weekend, where it was on premium VOD, as well as theaters, and that was kind of fun to see. As much as I love Indiana
Yeah.
Jones, you know.
Yeah. Right. I grew up watching that show.
Oh
Probably
yeah,
watched the old ones 100 times. But Kyle, we talked about this a little before the episode started. But how long was the strike? How long did it go on
I think
for?
the last number was 100 days. So very iconic, very long. And I had shot Muzzle. We had shot Bad Hombre. I was actually had finished up a movie called The Great White Throne Judgment, and we were filming a movie called Queen of the Ring in Louisville when the strike started. We actually were able to finish that film, but as an actor, as a producer, my whole world just stopped right there. So, I was like, what do I do? So, actually, with this strike, I actually had to get a day job as an armed guard. I'm an armed security guard in Nashville, Tennessee, until the strike was over. And now, of course, I'm getting back to everything, and we're going to be able to promote Bad Hombres. And I was able to promote Muzzle a little bit, but I mean, it was definitely a struggle, but got through it, and now I'm ready to hit the ground running.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And yeah, because that must have been unbelievable. Because it would, yeah, 180 days, and it was once again just kind of to boost like minimum wage and protection from AI, right? Because AI
Yeah,
apparently was
AI
like
AI was AI
getting
was the biggest d- um, uh, fight going on, and of
issue.
course the compensation raising, compensation because of inflation, and then also the residuals and the streaming and all that. So 3 big main points that now they've figured out for at least 3 more years. So
yeah. I mean, I find it hard to believe that within the next 3 years, like they were going to absolutely destroy the business. I mean, the amount of damage that was done, they're talking about like, billions and billions
Billions.
and billions of dollars of damage, and people out of work, people below the line crews living in their car, while all the actors went off and did all these like interim agreement movies so they continue to get paid. And like, so the whole thing was just like this really bogus deal. They were the rich actors weren't really on strike because they were all working, but the below the line people are
Yeah.
like going broke and going bankrupt and losing their homes, and their families are going without food. It was like, this is super dark. All for AI. Like, was the concern really that within the next 3 years there would be a fully AI Aaron Eckhart in a movie, like making money without his approval? Like, it just seems far fetched. I know AI is like a rapidly, and with Moore's law, like technology is rapidly increasing, and in 3 years it could be something. But like, let's just like do a little bit with that, some protections, but let's not go nuts here. Let's not destroy the business. If we're just going to renegotiate a deal in
Yeah.
3 years, like, why don't you guys just do that? And I'm sure in 3 years you'll have a much
Yeah.
clearer idea of the threat of AI for your jobs and whatnot. I mean,
Yeah.
I get it
AI
on
is
the
kind of
writing
crazy now with
side.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
ChatGPT, I get it on the writing side more than I got it on the acting side. Like writing, I
Yep.
get. Writers are already using ChatGPT. Like I use ChatGPT, like or Bard on Google. That's helpful as like a word-based AI. But in terms of fully formed character 3D generation, I feel like that was in the abstract. We weren't talking about
Hmm.
a tangible thing. It was an unknown, and I get it. Like you have to prepare yourselves and lay the groundwork, but to like implode the entire entertainment business, especially after it was just getting back on its feet after the pandemic, was myopic at best, in my opinion. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that part. Kind of it's ridiculous to say that a whole actor is going to get replaced by, AI somehow. They're going to render up like a 3D model of them, and somehow that just doesn't seem realistic. I don't think we're anywhere close from that being real. So that I didn't understand, but the chat GBT kind of writing stuff I kind of get.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to get back to the movie though.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you guys, when someone watches the movie Muzzle for the first time, what are they like, what do you want them to kind of get out of it? You know, it's a pro cop movie. It's super realistic. What else do you kind of want them to take away after they watch the
Well,
movie?
it's not necessarily the type of film, and I know that the trailer kind of showed it like it was it's like a rock'em sock'em action high octane thing. It's really supposed to be a piece. The idea is for it to be a piece of like almost like noir cinema. Like that's what I wanted people to take out of it, or just watch it. Like this is a piece of this is like I'm trying to do something a little bit old school and a little bit gritty, something that was more along the lines of like geez, like I mean, I talk about the French Connection, but like that William Friedkin vibe. Like it's a little grittier, it's a little dirtier, it's more in line with like cool '70s cinema, Don Siegel movies. I mean, Dirty Harry, like just something kind of gritty and cool, as opposed to like something that was trying to be super slick with a bunch of fake stuff happening and a bunch of like CGI. The benefit is I had no money for CGI, so it's like I can't do that. So it's like, then what do you do? Well, let's have good performances. Um, let's have an interesting character study of what it's like to be a cop. I think who's just killed somebody, like that's not fun. I'm sure. And all these stories where, you know, this is the first conversation I had with Aaron. This cop had just been involved in this shooting, and it was like tragedy all around. You know, killed this person at like who was defending themselves, but was about to kill someone else. Yelled a command, and within 2 seconds had the gun out. Person didn't drop the knife. Was trying to kill some other girl. Shot this girl. Turned out to be a teenager who was like trying to defend herself from bullies. The whole thing was just a tragedy, and lost in that whole tragedy was I had said, God, that it's just so hard on everybody involved. And then I thought, but people were condemning the cop, and the cop was now de facto on trial for homicide. Even though if you watch the video, you're like, oh my God, he was Hobson's choice, but he did exactly by the book and like perfect execution on an impossible to win situation. And the thing just turned out to be a tragedy. Either way, had he shot, he did shoot, tragedy. Had he not shot, tragedy, right? And so nobody in that conversation was like, how is that guy doing? We've checked in with everybody, but except him. I'm wondering, that was the worst day of that guy's life. You know, not to diminish anyone else's tragedy, but like he's a part of it too. And everybody, not only did they
Exactly.
like not check in, they condemned him. And I remember saying, God, that seemed like good police work, even though it was an impossible to win situation. Um, he was damned from the second he pulled up to that thing. So it's like, that's an interesting film to me. Like, what's it like to subjectively experience something from that cop's perspective? And if I can show that in a film and have an audience watch that, that could be something interesting. So I don't think, this is the type of film to watch if you just want to watch like cars jumping around and driving really fast. Like, go watch Fast and the Furious. If you just want to watch a bunch of like
Yeah.
fake explosions, like go watch Fast and the Furious. Some like, if you want to watch cheesy, like kung fu gunfights, go watch John Wick. If you want to watch that stuff with a dog, we have the craft service budget of John Wick. So it's like, if you want to watch something that doesn't fight against what it has, but uses it as like a character study and a subjective piece of cinema, then our film's for you. Or if you're a canine cop, you know.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. Kyle, what do you think about it? What do you think someone should take away from this film?
Well, John said it well, but John and I, we just want to make really awesome movies that everybody can get behind. We don't really put the Hollywood touch on it, whatever. We just want to make great films, and it's up to the viewer of really what they want to get out. It's art, right? So if somebody looks at a piece of art or they listen to music or watch a movie, they're going to have their own interpretations. So we just want to make really awesome films that people can go to and get something out of and coming out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, because what I really liked is, what John was kind of saying. It's just there's so much attention on the cop, you know, for what he was like doing from the start. He was thrown into this chaotic situation. He was supposed to somehow go perfectly by the manual. You have an explosion, you have this and that, you have drugs everywhere, you have like, how do you know what to do in that situation, right? And then all of a sudden, you know, this his dog that he was with from the start gets injured, and then all of a sudden people are just treating him so poorly. It's like, how does someone not freak out from that? You know, how you are constantly getting mistreated, all the attention's on you. You know, there was phones everywhere recording everything he did. And I feel like that happens a lot nowadays, with police officers. Is just whatever they do, there's cell phones everywhere. Just imagine being recorded like 24/7, and even like the body cams, right? Just imagine that. That's got to be so much
Oh, it's
pressure.
like
And
so much second guessing, you know? It's like
exactly,
every move is going to be second guessed. And even if you do your job, right? Look, are all dentists good? Are all doctors good? It's like they're bad apples in every profession. Are all filmmakers good?
of
Like
course.
there's bad apples in every profession. But generally speaking, um, even if you do your job well and you fire your weapon and it's an officer involved shooting, the the review that is triggered from that is automatically the default position of the review is a homicide investigation of you where you're not allowed defense. You're allowed a union representative. And now they have what's called, and we had it in the movie, but I cut it out, a civilian review board involved in your use of force hearings, where you're effectively, again, you've done your job exactly by the book and exactly well, to the degree that they would show it in like training for other officers and the
Mhm.
cadets. Yet you are on suspension, sometimes without pay. You have a homicide investigation of you in a kangaroo court that's presided over not by a judge or jury, but by a civilian review board that knows nothing about the use of force training or the statutes by which the use of force investigation is operating. You have an internal review division of the LAPD essentially trying you in this kangaroo court. Your life is at stake. You
Yeah.
don't get a defense attorney, and you only have a union rep. And look, we just had a conversation about how union reps go. It's like, that's your defense. And so we tried to show that in the meeting. Like, he's looking at this guy like, are you going to jump in here? And the guy's just like, not
Yep.
interested. Like, he's just like not helpful in the situation.
I'm
So
taking notes. I'm
tough.
taking
Yeah, he's
notes.
like,
That was
he's
hilarious.
like,
It's like,
I'm
whoa.
taking notes. He's like, thank you, thanks for that. And then you've got guys who are like, you know, coming after you with their knives out and trying to like put you in prison. Even if you did, like, we as the audience saw that like this maniac was shooting at you, and killing your partner and firing at you when you're giving him like lawful commands to drop the gun, identifying yourself, like he's doing everything right. LAPD, drop the gun, you know. He does everything right. um and once they turn on him and they muzzle him effectively, right, he's not allowed to see the autopsy, he's not allowed to find out the identity of the shooter, like, and he feels like he fucking deserves that. I deserve the right to know
Yeah.
who shot at me and killed my partner. I deserve the right to know the actual cause of death because my partner was acting funny after he was sniffing all these drug vials, you know, and turns out later the dog ingested fentanyl. And, you know, I saw that President Biden is meeting with President Xi from China, and on their like docket is fentanyl. And it's like interesting. It's like the first time at like a high, that high level, like a presidential level, like the notion that China has been pumping fentanyl into our country and it's been being smuggled up through the border, which is all part of this movie, is being discussed, is kind of interesting. And it's like, you know, I'm not saying Muzzle like, you know, did anything, but like Muzzle definitely brought it into pop culture. Like I hadn't seen a pop culture movie that was like, this is what's happening. Chinese fentanyl is being brought over, like shitty pharmaceutical grade Chinese fentanyl is coming to Mexico. It's being cut into drugs that are being smuggled up through the border. They're being distributed on our streets. There's these crazy drugs, you know, that all these guys are getting high off, loaded with fentanyl, called trank. All these homeless guys are like
It's called
zombies.
with xylazine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It's called a
xylazine and
zombie drug.
zombie drugs. It's called trank on the street. And these guys, if you look at them, there's a new video on the internet this morning of like a guy on Trank who's like working at a gas station. So he's the employee of the gas station. You see it. It's like on Twitter.
Hmm.
And he's like full zombie behind the glass. They're like, we're trying to get some gas, man. Like, give us some gas. And the guy's just like fully tranked out. You see all those people bent over. Like, it's turning our world upside down into a zombie apocalypse. And people are insecure to point their finger at what's happening. And so if Muzzle did, not that it's an agenda movie, but we're just trying to be real, right? We're trying to be real. Like, let's be real here. What the problem is, why 52 square blocks of Los Angeles downtown, we're talking about one of like the largest cities in the world. 52 square blocks are a zombie apocalypse. Like, and that's okay. Why is that the case? You know, so hopefully, like, this movie just is firmly planted in reality, which is sort of holding a mirror up to people. Like, hello, this is the world we're living in, guys. People are like, oh, he
Yeah.
painted this dystopian vision of LA. I'm like, LA's my hometown, MF. Like, this is where I was born. This is the reality of it. You know, if you don't like it, fine, but don't tell me it's not real, because it is.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the fentanyl crossing the border and the drugs crossing the border and the open border we have, because people don't realize how big of an issue that is. Because if we're going to talk about drugs over the border with the 200,000 encounters a month of illegal immigrants, like
Insane.
who knows? That's just the ones they encounter, right? And then when it comes to drugs, and I got some statistics right here.
Mm,
So people don't realize drugs over the border in 2023 just confiscated, not the stuff that got over, right?
right.
150,000 pounds of marijuana was confiscated at the border, 140,000 pounds of meth, 27,000 pounds of fentanyl. That was just confiscated at the border. And if I did my math correctly, so fentanyl, right? About 2 milligrams of fentanyl can
Yeah.
be lethal,
I
right?
think it's no,
So
it's
if
I think
there's
it's sorry, I
20,
think it's 2 micrograms. I don't know if it may be milligrams, but there's some
yeah,
stories there's
it's
some stories
milligrams.
that just as small as like 4 micrograms has gone airborne from a police evidence room through the air system and has been inhaled by an officer 4 rooms away and has been fatal. So like that's how
That's
it
crazy.
can go. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem. It's just like what I've looked up is 2 milligrams, right,
Yeah.
is can be lethal when it comes to fentanyl. So if I did my math correctly, because they just encountered 27 thousand pounds of fentanyl at the border, that's enough to kill 6.1 billion people. Okay, I
Yeah.
don't think people realize that
That's crazy.
6.1 billion people.
That's
So that's
crazy.
just the stuff getting like caught, right? That's the stuff they see. Never mind the stuff that's actually getting over and getting into the California and Texas, where, like you said, that the xylazine, the trank drug, right, xylazine and fentanyl, where now it's not an opioid anymore because now they can't use Narcan on it, right? So
Right.
all these overdoses are going skyrocketing, right? I think it's like 1,000, 1,500% in some areas, like in near Texas, California, and also somewhat on the East Coast. All these overdose deaths are absolutely just skyrocketing. And it's really sad to see, but it's all because of the policies we have right now that just are allowing this open border.
Do
Like
you
imagine
know
6.1 billion. Isn't
six
that mind
one?
blowing?
That's almost the entire population of Earth. I mean, 8 billion. What is the? Do you know the statistics on the amount of Americans dying each year from fentanyl? I think it's 100,000 to 150,000 a year. Is that right?
What I saw the overdose on fentanyl. I'm not exactly sure.
It's
I
north of
forgot the
100. I know
statistics.
it's north of 100. It's either 100
Yeah,
plus or
I think it
150.
was 150. I think it was
Well,
150. I think that
regardless,
was it.
the entire number of dead in the entire American involvement in Vietnam was 50,000. Just to put things into perspective, the entire Vietnam War, we lost 50,000 Americans, right? Okay. We're losing 100 to 150,000 every year from that shit. Like that's coming flowing across the border. So you're like, and yet we're just allowing that. Like there was marches on Washington to end Vietnam, and there's just crickets on this.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's just mind blowing to me, the stuff
Mind
that's
blowing.
happening, and the film Muzzle just goes over that perfectly. I'm so glad you picked the drug fentanyl, which is the biggest problem right now because it's come from China, coming over the border, getting in to LA and all California in the west side, east side. And and it's so it was crazy because in the movie, right, there was that one scene where that guy had the glove and he goes, 2 drops of this stuff, right? He said something like that where it can be fatal. I
Yeah.
thought that was
Yeah, I think he says, I
crazy.
think he might even say one drop of it, and he flicks a little bit into his face. And we've seen, Aaron and I looked at videos of cops getting accidentally affected by. Have you ever seen uniformed officers accidentally coming in contact with fentanyl while they're doing like tossing a car, right? And they're looking through a car, and then this one girl, you see this video online, this cop, fully outfitted cop, just goes one, two, down, and she's out. And they give her Narcan and they bring her back. It's like insane. That's just coming in. She happened to just knock some around. It got in her face or something. Got in her eye, and
Yeah.
she's almost dead. So you're talking about this like insanely virulent, substance, and uh, and it's flowing, like we said, like it's just being brought in on ships. I mean, here's the thing. So you really try to track it, and it's not obviously coming from, just to clarify, the Chinese government isn't like producing this and selling it. What's happening is independent companies are, but they're sort of exist in this kind of system between communism and capitalism, where all these private companies are sort of like de facto or like pseudo owned by the government. So the government has like
Hmm.
control over them, but they're sort of weirdly kind of independent. It's like this, light
Yeah, it's
communism.
very
Communism.
difficult to explain to someone that's never looked into this. Yeah.
It's communism light, right? That's why you can have like a Jack Ma who's like a billionaire, like Chinese billionaires. It's like, well, how do they billionaires if the government owns their companies? Well, they own them, but they sort of have kickbacks to this kind of illicit, like it's a gangster situation, right? Where you take care of them, they take care of you. So you have these pharmaceutical companies making pharmaceutical grade fentanyl, and that's the stuff being shipped to Mexico, right? Now, in reality, I don't think that pharmaceutical grade stuff that's being shipped to the cartels in Mexico is being smuggled up per se. I think it's probably more likely being cut into the drugs in South America, right? And and obviously it's just impact boosting their product. Like if you were Coca-Cola
Hmm.
and there was no FDA and you could put more caffeine in your Coke, you probably would, right? Or in
Yeah.
fact, they used to put cocaine in Coke, right? And if you could still put cocaine in Coke and make your product as addictive as cocaine, you would. But we have it government regulated. Well, the drug industry is not government regulated, obviously. So the drug companies want to impact boost the same way the cigarette companies wanted to add nicotine to cigarettes, their product. And if they can cut fentanyl into their cocaine, into their meth, into their trank, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but cut it into everything, make their drugs more addictive. They don't mean to kill people. They're not trying to kill their customers. That's bad business, right? They're trying to make their drug as addictive as possible. And they want to ride that line between it's so addictive that you can't think of anything but their product and it won't kill you. But that's a very thin
Hmm.
line, as 150,000 people a year are finding out.
Yeah. No, I agree that unfortunately, but
Yeah.
um, I mean, so you guys have some up and coming projects too. It's not just I understand Muzzle. Great. What do you say? Bad Hombres? Is
Yeah.
that an up and coming movie? Is that more?
Yeah, Bad Hombres
What's that
is
going to be
yeah,
about?
Bad Hombres is a crime thriller. It's an irreverent crime thriller, almost in the vein of like Reservoir Dogs, about these
Okay.
two gangsters who are shot up in a deal gone wrong. Paul Johansson and Luke Hemsworth are shot up in a deal gone wrong, and they have to dispose of the bodies in their trunk, but they're so shot up that they can't dig a hole to get rid of these bodies. So they hire two day laborers outside of a hardware store, like it's a True Value, but it's like a Home Depot, and they hire these guys. One of them is like an old school, Mexican guy who's been a day laborer for years and years and years. And one of them is his first day in America, played by Diego Tinoco. The old school guy's played by Hemke Madera. And Kyle produced this film as well with us. And these guys get hired by these gangsters. And of course, once they realize what they've been hired to do, it becomes this cat and mouse with these day laborers versus these shot up gangsters over the course of one night. Nick Cassavetes is in the film. He plays a vet in this border town who's got to sort of help them,
Mhm.
sew these gangsters up and sew up the day laborers as things go wrong. And he's in over his head. Tyrese Gibson's in the film. He plays like a cleaner for the company that, in the deal that went south um, with the drug cartels and who these gangsters that are shot up who've gone rogue work with, or the company they work for. So it's this like group of bad hombres who are all like thrown in together in this kind of night on the run and a night to survive. It's like really fun. We won the grand jury prize in best screenwriting at Mammoth, and the film's in theaters January 26th, and we're really proud of it. It's like a little labor of love that really turned out to be a magical little piece of like high art genre, filmmaking, like Reservoir Dogs or something like that.
Yeah. And what was the kind of the inspiration?
Oh, Thomas Jane. I forgot Thomas Jane. Of course, my friend Thomas Jane, one of his best turns in a long time. He played the Punisher, and
Oops.
obviously played the character, the classic character from Boogie Nights. In that famous Boogie Nights drug deal scene gone wrong. We tried to capture that tone, which to me is like the double diamond tone, where it's like funny, but you feel uncomfortable about laughing because someone could be killed. So you're feeling like unbelievable tension and stress, but you're feeling so much stress, you feel uncomfortable to laugh. Like it's that Paul Thomas Anderson just absolutely caned that tone of like that scene. It's funny and dangerous at the same time. And I think we pulled it off throughout the whole movie. It's a funny but dangerous tone. Everything's real, but everything's funny, but be careful because something really scary is about to happen.
Yeah, yeah. So the bad hombres part, what inspired you with that movie?
Well,
Is this like a criminal, another criminal movie
I was
type
literally,
thing?
I just hired these guys from Home Depot that were putting in like railroad tie stuff at my house. And I thought to myself, "Oh, these guys don't even know who I am." And they're like hopping in my car and like going to do this gig. And I was like, what if I was just like some psycho? Like that's kind of where I got the idea. And then I pitched it to Rex New and Nick Turner, the writers, and we started developing the script based on that idea. And they really brought a lot to the table, and we just kept reworking the script, and then we sent it out to Thomas Jane. He got excited. We sent it to Tyrese. He got excited. Then we started casting a bunch of great actors like Luke Hemsworth, Nick Cassavetes, Paul Johansson, Hemke Madera, Diego Tinoco, who's in Muzzle as well. Diego's sort of
Yeah.
the lead of Bad Hombres, and Kyle came on to produce it, and we put that thing together in New Mexico and shot it. We actually shot it before Muzzle, but just that's the way it goes in Hollywood. It's actually coming out a few months after.
Yeah. Is that how you come up with the kind of movie ideas? You just kind of every day you're doing something, then you just is that how you usually came up with
Totally.
it?
That's how I came up with Muzzle. That's how I came up with Bad Hombres. I was Muzzle. I'm driving along a
That's crazy.
highway. We wrapped Crypto. I was driving by a canine officer in New York, and he was talking. And as we pulled up alongside of him, I saw he was talking to a dog. But he was like having just a normal conversation. Like he wasn't saying, "There's a good boy." He was
Oh.
just like chatting, and he was talking. It looked like he was talking to his dog. He may have been on the phone or on the radio, but it looked to me like he was. And it was a rainy, dark night, and we passed him slowly on the. So it was the slow reveal of who he was talking to, and we slowly revealed the dog. And the first 15 minutes of the movie were clear. I'm like, that guy, best friend, partner, called to a thing. 10 minutes in, he's killed. Huge police funeral for the dog, and you realize, oh wow, they really treat it like a fallen officer. Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
And then it's a meet your new partner movie, and it's done totally serious. And I pitched it to the writer of Crypto when I walked into the rap party in Manhattan, and Carlisle Eubank, who again is like a great writer, great filmmaker himself. And I said to him like, "Hey, I got this thing," and he's like, "Oh, I used to raise German shepherds. Did you know that they like are trained in German and Dutch, and these officers speak German to their dog?" No, that's interesting, and yeah, and we started riffing on it over just having a drink, and at the end of our drink, like we had the first half of the movie like plotted out, and he went back and then sort of trying to develop the other half, and then we just start working on this. Then he had the script, and then we start working on the script, and oh well, what if this happens? What if this happens? And it's the same with Bad Hombres. Like had an idea, pitched it to him, a shit ton of ramen soup with those guys. I must have bought us like 50 ramen lunches at this little ramen spot that we went to accidentally in LA on La Brea, and like we just would meet at this ramen place and just break the story down. And yeah, that's how it goes. Sometimes I'll direct a script that just comes to me like crypto that I had nothing to do with the story.
Yeah.
Or high school, I came up with the story, and then we developed it with a writer on that one as well. So like, you know, long overdue. Eric Lindhorst, who wrote that, he deserves credit for that. And we just work with writers, come up with ideas, or I'll like I'm looking at some scripts that are written by like very prestigious writers where I just want to come on and direct it because it's such an amazing script.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the idea like um when he was kind of talking to his canine unit in the car. It's
Yeah.
just like that's got to be how it is, right? I mean, you're around your dog all the time. You put it in the front seat, right? Shotgun. It's like those guys, the police officers, they're sitting in the car all the whole time. I mean, and you got this dog that's with them all the time, man's best friend. I feel like that was really realistic, and I like that part of the movie where he's kind of having a conversation with his dog. And if there was like really no dog, it's like who would you talk to? I didn't even think about that. How alone cops are for a huge amount of time. Like maybe they talk on the radio or something, but it's got to be a very lonely job. So I thought
Yeah.
that was a really interesting part that you added.
Well, again, like that was the inspiration for the movie was seeing this guy in the car talking, which it looked like he was just like having a heart to heart conversation with his dog.
Was the dog in shotgun?
Yeah,
Was the dog in like
dog was in
shotgun?
shotgun
Yeah,
on the
yeah, yeah.
freeway.
It's got
Yeah,
to be.
yeah, which is funny. And obviously these guys have big kennels in the back. These dogs normally ride in the back, so that was unusual. It caught my attention, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so we wrote that into the character. Is this guy driving around talking to his dog in shotgun, and boy, is that like an interesting way to get an insight into character. So the first 5 minutes of a movie, you really want to establish character and who this guy is, and so we did that through that device of him talking to his dog. It's you think he's talking to his partner, you think he's talking to himself, you don't know who he's talking to, and then you reveal it's this dog, and that hopefully says a lot. And then boom, you know, you get the call that something's gone wrong, and he's needed, and his dog's needed to do some of their job, and that's police work, and it's difficult and dangerous, and stuff goes sideways, and so then boom, you're into the movie. So it felt like a good device for us, and Aaron really did it, I think, in an interesting way. Some people either like it or hate it, but I really like it. Like it's cinema to me. It's like boom, we start on the shaking,
yeah,
like super close shot, beautiful shot from Peter Vermeer, and it's just like this gritty, just close up on this movie star guy who's a great actor doing, reading stuff that's like really kind of almost mundane, but gives you an insight into his character. Like one of the first things he says is, "It's like, yeah, it's hot, but it's this is nothing. Iraq is 130 degrees." So you immediately get that he's a veteran. Um,
yeah,
and a guy who ultimately you reveal is dealing with like severe PTSD, and this process like is not necessarily good for it, as he's like relating to his therapist, and he's becoming more on edge, because there's nobody, like you said, there's nobody there for him, and he has to kind of like he's gonna find answers one way or the other, and like those classic Hollywood rogue cops with a code type characters go, like he's gonna find out come hell or high water what happened to his partner.
yeah, yeah. So, well, all right. So it's coming out. The actually DVD when the time this podcast comes out. The DVD will be out. It's already out now. If you guys want to watch it somewhere else, right? Anyone watching? It's an amazing movie, super realistic. You guys did an amazing job, and you guys have the upcoming films. What were they again?
Bad Hombres, and Kyle's got his. Bad Hombres comes out January 26th in theaters.
And what about you, John? What are your
I'm
socials
just
if
I'm
anyone wants to reach out to you?
on Instagram, John Stalberg Jr. John Stalberg Jr. And that's basically it. So reach out
Well,
and
you
reach
guys
out and say
did
hi.
an amazing job, though. Yeah, you guys did an amazing job on that film. If you guys haven't watched it, go watch Muzzle because that was a fantastic film, super realistic. Love the pro cop aspect of it. Love the realism to it with the fentanyl, just how big of a problem it is, and how tough it is for cops to truly do their job nowadays. Even with the body cams, everyone looking at them with the phone, recording them. I see all these videos about people saying, oh, like, I can't breathe. Like, that has to be the most, it's got to be one of the most stressful jobs nowadays, just to be an officer. But
Yo,
I
yeah.
truly appreciate you guys coming on. And I think that is it for episode 5 of the Right Minds, Right Times podcast.
Thanks so
Have a
much,
good one.
Tyler. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.